The story begins in the opulent yet dangerous world of Alexandria, the heart of Egypt's ancient empire. Cleopatra, just a young woman barely out of her teens, finds herself thrust into the role of queen after the sudden and mysterious death of her brother, Ptolemy XIII. The royal court buzzes with suspicion. Whispers of foul play and treachery spiral through the corridors as her brother's body is found under circumstances that defy explanation. The throne, once shared by the siblings, now belongs solely to Cleopatra, but her ascent is anything but secure. Amidst the splendor of her luxurious palace, Cleopatra struggles to assert her authority. The court is divided, with factions loyal to her brother's memory and those who support Cleopatra's rise. The young queen's first move is calculated but risky. She invokes the favor of the gods and makes a grand display of her royal lineage, presenting herself as both the embodiment of Isis, the goddess of wisdom, and the rightful ruler of Egypt. But her charm can only do so much in a world where betrayal is a constant companion. Stay with me as we break it all down. But first, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our deep dives into world events. Let's get started. Cleopatra's most trusted advisor, her childhood mentor, warns her that power in Alexandria is not easily earned. It is taken. The young queen begins to realize that in order to secure her rule, she must outwit not only her enemies within the palace, but the very forces threatening Egypt's stability. The court becomes a dangerous game of shadows, with every move Cleopatra makes watched by rival factions, each eager to take advantage of her inexperience. Tensions reach a boiling point when Cleopatra uncovers a chilling truth. Her brother's death may have been part of a larger plot, orchestrated by someone in her own inner circle. Was it her uncle, who has long coveted her throne, or a rival faction within Egypt's priesthood, who saw Cleopatra's ascension as a threat to their influence? The question eats away at Cleopatra's mind, and the once proud young ruler is soon torn between seeking vengeance and maintaining her delicate grasp on power. As Cleopatra contemplates her next move, she takes an unexpected step. She opens the gates of the palace and steps into the streets of Alexandria, disguised as a commoner. This bold and unprecedented act allows her to hear firsthand the voice of the people, to understand the shifting tides of loyalty that will determine her fate. It is a gamble, but it shows her true character. She is not only the queen of Egypt, but a ruler willing to bend the rules of power, to find new paths to her throne. By the end of this first chapter, Cleopatra is no longer just a young queen. It is clear that she is playing a game of political chess, one where every move could either solidify her reign or send her spiraling into obscurity. The shadows of betrayal are closing in, but Cleopatra's hunger for power is just beginning to awaken. As Cleopatra consolidates her fragile grip on the throne, a strange and ancient mystery begins to unfurl, one that could redefine her very existence. Deep within the sacred halls of the Temple of Isis, Cleopatra stumbles upon a cryptic prophecy, its contents hidden for centuries and bound in scrolls too old to be trusted. The prophecy speaks of a royal bloodline that traces its origin to a forbidden union between a mortal and a god, a lineage destined to rule Egypt forever, an heir that will bring both salvation and destruction, one whose rise to power will alter the course of history. The moment Cleopatra lays eyes on the prophecy, she feels an unshakable chill, a mixture of awe and fear. Was it possible? Could this prophecy be referring to her? The thought sends ripples through her, sparking a growing obsession. The words on the scroll claim that the ruler of Egypt would not only possess the blood of pharaohs, but the divine essence of a god, and that this ruler would be marked by a destiny beyond the mortal realm. But the identity of the god remains veiled in ambiguity. Could it be Ra, the sun god, or perhaps Horus, the god of kingship? Cleopatra's mind swirls with unanswered questions. In a moment of reckoning, Cleopatra dares to visit an oracle deep in the desert, known only to a select few, who is said to possess knowledge of the hidden forces shaping her fate. The oracle's cryptic words strike deep within her. The truth lies in the blood, but it is not of the past. Beware the lies woven by your kin, for the gods do not forget, and neither do your enemies. These words leave Cleopatra shaken and confused. The idea of her divine lineage, though alluring, comes with dangerous consequences. If the prophecy is true, it would mean that her very identity and claim to the throne are far more complex than she had ever imagined. But if she is the product of a divine union, why is she surrounded by suspicion? Why has no one ever spoken of this godly parentage? Back in Alexandria, Cleopatra becomes fixated on uncovering the full extent of the prophecy's meaning. She secretly meets with the high priests of the temple, demanding answers. Yet, the priests seem unwilling to speak openly. One even warns her that the gods do not take kindly to mortal interference with their mysteries. The more Cleopatra digs, the more she realizes how tightly woven the tapestry of politics and divine will is. Her royal bloodline is not just a matter of family heritage, but part of a grander scheme, one that transcends her current understanding. At the same time, Cleopatra's reign is under threat. Roman emissaries, sent by Julius Caesar, arrive in Alexandria with increasing frequency. Their presence only intensifies the pressure she faces to align with Rome or risk being swallowed by its imperial ambitions. The prophecy, however, suggests that Cleopatra's destiny is more than a political alliance. She is not merely a queen, but perhaps the vessel of a much larger cosmic purpose. In her solitude, Cleopatra grapples with the weight of her newfound knowledge. She is no longer a mere ruler. She is the keeper of a powerful secret, one that could change the fate of Egypt forever. The divine blood coursing through her veins might not just ensure her rule, but set her on a path that could pit her against gods and men alike. Cleopatra is now caught in a delicate dance of fate, torn between her mortal instincts and the divine prophecy that whispers of something far greater. But as her power grows, so too does the looming threat of betrayal. A shadowy faction within the court seems aware of her obsession, and a rival prince, hungry for the throne, begins to move behind the scenes, his interest in the prophecy perhaps more than political. Cleopatra's enemies are closing in, and as her understanding of the prophecy deepens, she realizes that the most dangerous forces are not those she can see, but those that lie hidden beneath layers of deception and destiny. The prophecy has become a double-edged sword, one that could either secure her place as the ruler of all Egypt or destroy everything she holds dear. Cleopatra's ascent to power takes an unexpected turn when the mighty Julius Caesar, the ruler of Rome, arrives in Alexandria. The Roman general's presence stirs the city, and Cleopatra's advisors view the visit as an opportunity to strengthen ties with Rome. But Cleopatra knows that this could be more than just an alliance. It is a turning point, a chance to secure her throne and her legacy on a scale greater than she had ever imagined. At first, the two leaders seem worlds apart: Cleopatra, the enigmatic Queen of Egypt, and Caesar, the conqueror of Rome. But beneath the political intrigue, a magnetic pull draws them together. Cleopatra is struck by Caesar's power, his genius for strategy, and his unrelenting ambition. For Caesar, Cleopatra is a vision, intelligent, independent, and a ruler in her own right. Despite the differences in their worlds, they share a deep, unspoken understanding. Both are driven by an unyielding thirst for power. It is in the private chambers of Cleopatra's palace that the true depth of their relationship begins to unfold. At first, Cleopatra's advances are calculated, carefully maneuvered to secure the emperor's favor. She seeks his help in stabilizing her reign, knowing that Rome's military might could crush any rival claims to the throne. But as the days pass, the political alliance turns into something far more complicated. Cleopatra begins to see Caesar as more than just an ally. His presence electrifies her, and his understanding of power intrigues her. In turn, Caesar finds himself drawn to Cleopatra's sharp intellect and commanding presence, qualities that few others possess. Their interactions are carefully orchestrated, their words often laced with double meanings and hidden agendas. Cleopatra is well aware that Rome is a force to be reckoned with, but she also knows that she cannot afford to be a mere puppet in Caesar's empire. She is determined to maintain Egypt's sovereignty while securing her personal position as the undisputed queen. With every conversation, Cleopatra plays her cards carefully, balancing between alliance and self-preservation, subtly weaving her influence into Caesar's mind. Every gesture, every word, is calculated to bind Caesar to her cause. However, Caesar is no fool. He sees through Cleopatra's charm, recognizing her as a brilliant strategist in her own right. He understands that she is not merely a woman who seeks his favor. She is a ruler in her own right, one who plays the game of thrones as well as any man. Caesar's attraction to her only deepens as he realizes that Cleopatra's ambition is not for a fleeting power, but for something eternal. She is not just a lover or a political pawn. She is a queen who will stop at nothing to secure her reign, even if it means bending the very laws of the empire. In the midst of their growing bond, however, Cleopatra's fear of betrayal takes root. Caesar is deeply involved in Rome's wars, and his commitment to his own empire may one day turn against her. To safeguard her future, Cleopatra plays a dangerous game, further entwining herself with Caesar, while keeping a watchful eye on his ambitions. She understands that Rome's hunger for conquest could one day spill over into Egypt, and that her survival depends on securing Caesar's loyalty. But how long can she trust a man whose primary allegiance is to Rome? One evening, Cleopatra dares to ask Caesar the unthinkable. What if Egypt were not a satellite of Rome, but a partner? What if we, together, could create a new order? Caesar's response is as enigmatic as ever, but the question lingers between them. An unspoken promise that stirs something deep within Cleopatra's heart. But as the bond between them deepens, Cleopatra's enemies grow restless. Among her court, whispers of her relationship with Caesar spread like wildfire. Some view her as a traitor to Egypt, while others fear the implications of a union with Rome's most powerful man. Cleopatra's position as queen is growing increasingly precarious as the delicate balance of power in Alexandria teeters on the brink of collapse. In a dramatic twist, just when it seems as though Cleopatra's political machinations have reached their peak. A rival faction within the royal court seizes the opportunity to undermine her, spreading rumors that Cleopatra has become so enmeshed with Caesar that she may abandon Egypt's interests for her own personal gain. The air is thick with tension as Cleopatra prepares for her next move, knowing that in a world governed by power, loyalty is never guaranteed. Yet, she has no choice but to continue the dance with Caesar, for the future of Egypt and her place in history may depend on it. Their relationship, once purely political, is now a delicate blend of passion and danger. Cleopatra knows that Caesar could be the key to her survival, but his loyalty and her own will be tested in ways neither can foresee. In this game of power, love, and manipulation, Cleopatra has learned that there is no such thing as a safe bet. As Cleopatra's relationship with Julius Caesar deepens, she becomes increasingly aware that her future, and Egypt's future, is irrevocably tied to the shifting tides of Roman politics. Though Caesar's influence offers a rare opportunity for stability, it also comes with tremendous risks. Cleopatra is no fool. She knows that Caesar's eyes are not solely on Egypt, and that his ambitions stretch far beyond her borders. As Caesar's campaigns sweep through Rome's vast empire, Cleopatra must navigate a maze of alliances and threats that could either solidify her reign or lead to its downfall. The Egyptian queen's position grows more precarious when Caesar, after securing his victories in Gaul and the Roman Civil War, begins to focus his attention on consolidating his control over Rome. Cleopatra, despite the passion that binds them, finds herself faced with a hard choice. Can she trust Caesar to honor his promises to Egypt, or will his growing power demand his complete attention elsewhere, leaving her vulnerable to Rome's insatiable hunger for domination? In Alexandria, Cleopatra's advisors urge her to secure her position by taking steps to solidify her power base. Some recommend she strengthen her ties to Caesar, while others suggest a more cautious approach, advocating for an independent stance that could help her preserve Egypt's sovereignty. Cleopatra, ever astute, understands the dangers of either path. An outright alliance with Caesar could alienate those in her court who fear Rome's increasing influence over Egypt, while failing to align with him could lead to a dangerous isolation, leaving her kingdom open to Roman conquest. Compounding her dilemma is the unexpected return of her brother's loyalists. They have been quietly plotting from the shadows, using the growing discontent in Alexandria to rally forces that would unseat Cleopatra. The threat is very real. Ptolemy XIII's faction seeks to restore the monarchy to the original family line, and they have gained powerful allies within Egypt's priesthood, whose influence stretches deep into the heart of Egyptian society. Cleopatra's control over the kingdom is now in jeopardy, and she can feel the cold hand of betrayal tightening around her. In a bid to quash this growing threat, Cleopatra convenes a council of her most trusted generals and advisors. They devise a plan to eliminate the dissidents once and for all, swiftly and decisively. However, as the conspirators plot in the shadows, Cleopatra's mind is consumed with the complexities of her alliances. She realizes that her every move must be calculated with precision, not only to secure her kingdom, but also to preserve her standing in the eyes of Caesar. In the midst of these preparations, Cleopatra receives a startling message. Caesar has returned to Rome. His absence is more than just a brief absence from her court. It signals a shift in the power dynamics of both Rome and Egypt. Caesar's departure leaves Cleopatra vulnerable, with Rome's eyes now turning toward the east. His absence threatens to unravel the delicate balance she has created. Cleopatra realizes that if she does not act quickly, she will lose control over her own destiny. Desperate, Cleopatra decides to take the boldest step yet. She will travel to Rome herself. The journey is fraught with peril, but it is a calculated risk. She believes that by aligning herself with Caesar's ambitions in Rome, she can secure not just her rule, but Egypt's place in the new world order Caesar is building. Her journey to Rome is a daring move, and it comes with great personal and political consequences. As Cleopatra prepares to leave Alexandria, she secretly fears that once she arrives in Rome, she will not be welcomed as a queen, but as a foreign interloper. Her status as a woman of power, combined with the political and religious tensions between Egypt and Rome, makes her journey all the more dangerous. Yet, Cleopatra knows that she has no other choice. It is either Rome or ruin. Upon arriving in Rome, Cleopatra is met with both awe and suspicion. The Roman Senate and the ruling elite view her presence with a mix of intrigue and distrust. Some see her as a tool of Caesar's ambitions, while others view her as a dangerous threat to the integrity of the Roman Empire. The city is buzzing with speculation. Can a foreign queen truly be trusted to support Caesar's imperial plans, or will she disrupt the delicate balance of power in Rome? Cleopatra, ever the strategist, plays her role carefully, knowing that her survival depends not on what she says, but on how she is perceived. In Rome, Cleopatra's charm and intellect work wonders. She captivates Caesar's inner circle and secures her position within the political elite, using her presence as a powerful bargaining chip. She strikes a series of subtle yet strategic alliances, carefully weaving her influence into the fabric of Roman politics. Yet, beneath the surface, Cleopatra remains ever vigilant. She knows that her stay in Rome is temporary, and that every moment she spends there is one fraught with danger. Back in Alexandria, her absence is keenly felt. The power vacuum left by Cleopatra's departure allows her enemies to regroup, and their machinations grow bolder. The priesthood, still loyal to her brother's faction, begin to mount a coordinated effort to overthrow Cleopatra's rule in her absence. Her generals and trusted advisors struggle to maintain order, but their loyalty is tested by the rising tide of discontent. Cleopatra's time in Rome becomes a critical juncture. Each decision she makes, each move she executes, is designed to secure Egypt's future, while also ensuring her own place in the great game of power. She is playing a delicate dance, balancing the needs of her kingdom, her love for Caesar, and her unwavering ambition to be not just a queen, but a kingmaker in her own right. As her influence spreads through Rome, Cleopatra must face the uncomfortable truth that no one, especially Caesar, can ever be fully trusted. Her rule, her very life, depends on how she navigates the perilous waters of Roman ambition and Egyptian loyalty. And as the stakes grow higher, Cleopatra knows that one wrong move could destroy everything she's worked so hard to build. As Cleopatra navigates the political labyrinth of Rome, her alliance with Julius Caesar deepens, but with it comes an emotional complexity that neither she nor Caesar can escape. Their relationship, once a matter of mutual convenience, evolves into something far more intricate, a bond that blurs the lines between love, politics, and ambition. Cleopatra's cold, calculating nature forged by years of navigating Egypt's treacherous royal court, meets its match in Caesar's passion and his overwhelming ambition to reshape the world. When Caesar is in her presence, Cleopatra sees more than just the ruler of Rome. She sees a man who is just as driven by desire and power as she is. Their chemistry is undeniable, and soon their political alliance begins to take on a more personal form. It is not just Cleopatra's intelligence and political acumen that Caesar finds alluring, but her understanding of power itself. The way she commands a room, how she shifts allegiances and plays her enemies, mirrors his own methods. But there's something more. There's an unspoken understanding between them, a shared vision that only two great rulers could possess. Despite their undeniable attraction, Cleopatra is cautious, and rightly so. She knows the dangers of investing emotionally in a man whose allegiance is first and foremost to Rome. She cannot afford to fall in love in the traditional sense, not when her kingdom's future is on the line. But in Caesar, she finds something rare, a kindred spirit, someone who understands the sacrifices that come with power. They share intimate moments where their hearts speak louder than their political ambitions. Yet, even as they share whispered words of affection under the veil of night, both are fully aware that this is not a relationship born from affection alone. It is a weapon, a necessary tool for survival. For Caesar, Cleopatra becomes an obsession, but not in the way one might expect. She is not just the exotic foreign queen who has captured his heart. She is a symbol of his conquest over Egypt, a woman who embodies the very empire he seeks to control. To the Roman public, their union is a scandalous affair, an affront to the values of Roman propriety, but for Caesar, it is an opportunity to secure Egypt as a stronghold under Roman dominion. Yet, in the silence of their shared moments, there is something deeper, a vulnerability that neither of them can fully acknowledge. Their forbidden love flourishes in the face of public scrutiny. They share moments of tenderness, hands grazing across ancient maps as they strategize, shared glances across banquets in Caesar's villa, their laughter cutting through the tension of political plotting. But there are also moments of deep unease as Cleopatra begins to question Caesar's true feelings. Is he truly in love with her, or is she simply a tool to further his ambitions? The lines begin to blur in her mind as Caesar's affection, though real, is constantly tempered by the weight of his Roman destiny. Cleopatra realizes that in the grand scheme of things, love, no matter how real it feels, can never be trusted in the way power can. The constant tension between political necessity and emotional desire builds with every passing day. Caesar, already a seasoned warlord, begins to view Cleopatra not just as a lover, but as a partner in his grand scheme to create a new world order. Yet, with every strategic move they make together, the cracks in their personal bond begin to show. Cleopatra's own doubts grow, as she becomes increasingly aware that Caesar's loyalty to Rome may one day supersede his devotion to her. As Caesar's power grows, so too does his need for control over everything: his empire, his alliances, and, perhaps, his love for Cleopatra. The moment of true tension comes when Cleopatra, after a long day of negotiations, dares to challenge Caesar's intentions directly. She asks him, in a moment of vulnerability, "If the gods called you away, if Rome demanded your full allegiance, would you leave me behind? Or would you stand beside me?" Caesar's response is enigmatic, his eyes darkened with the weight of a man who has never been forced to choose between love and empire. "I would stand beside you, Cleopatra," he says, but the words come with a weight that neither of them can deny. There is a lingering silence between them as the realization settles in. Their love, while real, is forever shaped by the demands of power. Caesar's empire looms over them, an ever-present reminder that nothing, neither love nor loyalty, can be fully trusted when the stakes are this high. As Caesar's conquest of the East brings him closer to completing his vision for Rome, Cleopatra begins to understand the full cost of their bond. She loves him, truly, deeply. But she also knows that love alone cannot guarantee the survival of Egypt. In the depths of their passion, Cleopatra is forced to question whether she is simply a pawn in a game of power that neither of them can ever truly escape. In the end, Cleopatra realizes that her connection with Caesar, though born of mutual ambition and desire, is also a dangerous dance, a delicate balance between love and politics. She cannot afford to lose herself in the sweetness of their forbidden love, for the future of Egypt depends on her ability to remain unflinching, calculating, and ultimately ruthless. Caesar, despite his affection, may never fully understand the sacrifices she must make to preserve her kingdom, and as their passionate affair continues, Cleopatra must find a way to navigate the precarious line between being Caesar's lover and Egypt's queen, knowing that, in the end, only one of those roles can come out victorious. As Cleopatra's power grows and her relationship with Julius Caesar deepens, she begins to realize that her greatest strength is not just her intellect or political savvy, but her ability to conceal the truth. The people of Egypt see her as the goddess-like queen who embodies the ideals of Isis, a ruler above reproach. But beneath the regal facade lies a secret so powerful, so fraught with danger, that it could destroy her reign if it were ever exposed. Cleopatra's true lineage, the origin of her power, has always been a carefully guarded mystery, known only to a select few. It is said that the blood of the gods runs through her veins, that she is descended from a divine union between a mortal ruler and a god. But in reality, this is not entirely true. Cleopatra's ancestry is not what the royal court believes. Her mother, the late queen, had been involved in a forbidden relationship, one that not only defied the gods, but also the very laws of Egypt's royal bloodline. Cleopatra's birth was the result of this illicit union, a truth so shrouded in secrecy that even Cleopatra herself had never fully understood its implications. Until now. The revelation comes in a moment of quiet reflection, when Cleopatra stumbles upon an ancient text hidden in the deepest vaults of Alexandria's library. The scroll, said to be written by the high priests of Amun, details the forbidden relationship between her mother and a mysterious foreign ruler, someone whose identity has been erased from history. The text is clear. Cleopatra's mother was not simply a queen, but a woman who had secretly betrayed the gods. And Cleopatra, born of this union, is not entirely of royal blood. She is a half-blood queen whose very existence challenges the sacred legitimacy of her throne. The implications of this discovery are staggering. If word of Cleopatra's true heritage ever spread, it would undermine her authority as ruler of Egypt. The divine right to rule that she claims would be questioned, and her enemies would seize the opportunity to tear her down, claiming that she was unworthy of her crown. Cleopatra realizes that this secret is not just a personal burden, it is a threat to the very kingdom she has fought so hard to protect. The belief that she is a goddess, a descendant of Ra, is what has allowed her to rule with both fear and reverence. Without it, she would be nothing more than a usurper, a woman who has lied her way to the throne. As the burden of this secret weighs heavily on her, Cleopatra finds herself more isolated than ever. She begins to withdraw from those closest to her, including her trusted advisor, Ptolemy's former general, who has been her constant companion since childhood. She hides the truth from him, fearful that even he might turn against her if he knew the real story behind her birth. But her paranoia grows, and her once unshakable confidence begins to falter. She fears that even her closest allies might be plotting against her, aware of her vulnerability. Meanwhile, Cleopatra's relationship with Caesar, once an alliance of mutual ambition, begins to take on an increasingly fraught tone. Caesar, despite his love for her, begins to notice the subtle changes in her demeanor. She becomes more distant, less trusting, and her political decisions, once sharp and calculated, now seem tinged with doubt. Her desperation to secure her power leads her to make dangerous moves, ones that she fears will ultimately betray her deeper insecurities. In one particularly tense moment, Cleopatra confides in Caesar about the weight of her secret, but only a fraction of it. She speaks vaguely, hinting at her own doubts about her royal lineage, but she cannot bring herself to reveal the full truth. Caesar, ever perceptive, senses her inner turmoil, but chooses not to push her further. He is already embroiled in his own political struggles, and he cannot afford to be distracted by Cleopatra's hidden fears. However, this silence between them begins to chip away at their bond, leaving a rift that neither can fully bridge. Her most dangerous enemy, however, is not Caesar or the faction that seeks to dethrone her. It is the high priesthood of Amun, the very men who once blessed her reign and declared her divine. Cleopatra's secret has long been guarded by their silence, but their power is not easily maintained. The high priests are aware of the prophecy that speaks of a queen whose divine heritage would come from a forbidden union, and some begin to suspect that Cleopatra's claims are based on lies. As whispers of her true lineage begin to circulate, Cleopatra finds herself at war with her own priests, those who once served her but now question her right to rule. One evening, as Cleopatra stands in the grand temple of Isis, a confrontation takes place. The high priestess, once a loyal ally, accuses Cleopatra of desecrating the divine order, of tarnishing the sacred bloodline that has always been the heart of Egypt's monarchy. Cleopatra, in a moment of raw vulnerability, comes face to face with the reality that her secret may be exposed sooner than she anticipated. The high priestess, with her knowledge of the old texts, threatens to reveal Cleopatra's true origins to the world. If she does, the queen's reign will collapse in an instant. In a desperate move, Cleopatra decides to confront the priesthood. She enters the temple alone, no guards, no advisors. She stands before the high priestess, her regal demeanor giving way to a new strength, a cold, calculating fury that burns brighter than any god. Cleopatra does not deny the accusation. Instead, she acknowledges her secret, but in doing so, she challenges the very foundation of Egypt's power. She speaks of the future of Egypt, a future where the gods will bend to her will, where the divine right to rule is not determined by birth, but by strength of character. In that moment, Cleopatra realizes that she cannot rely on the gods or the priesthood to secure her throne. She must rely on herself, and on the loyalty of those who believe in her vision, not just her bloodline. She leaves the temple, determined to keep her secret hidden for as long as she can, but knowing that, ultimately, her future will be defined not by her heritage, but by the choices she makes, and the power she is willing to seize, no matter the cost. With the weight of her hidden heritage bearing down on her, Cleopatra faces an escalating political crisis that threatens to tear Egypt apart. The news of Caesar's growing power in Rome sends ripples of uncertainty through Alexandria. As Caesar's ambitions stretch farther eastward, Cleopatra must navigate a precarious path. If she aligns too closely with Caesar, Egypt risks becoming nothing more than a satellite of Rome, its independence forever lost. Yet, if she turns against him, she faces the wrath of a conqueror whose military might is unrivaled. In Alexandria, Cleopatra begins to fortify her defenses, rallying her most loyal generals and advisors to secure the city. The priesthood, once a trusted ally, now whispers against her rule, accusing her of dishonoring the gods. The people are divided, some still loyal to the queen, others swayed by the growing rhetoric of her enemies. The whispers of betrayal grow louder, and Cleopatra realizes that she is not only fighting a battle for political survival, but for the very soul of Egypt. Her enemies inside the court are more dangerous than ever. A faction of the royal family, along with certain key military leaders, has quietly plotted to overthrow Cleopatra and restore Egypt to what they perceive as its rightful heritage. Their leader, a cunning and ambitious cousin, has secretly gathered support from powerful priests and influential families. Cleopatra once again must navigate the perilous waters of loyalty and betrayal. To maintain control, she knows she must act swiftly, before the insurgents can strike. Cleopatra's first move is to send emissaries to Rome, opening a dialogue with Caesar in an attempt to solidify his loyalty to her cause. She knows that Caesar's attention is divided between Rome's political struggles and his ongoing campaigns, but his support is essential if she is to keep her kingdom intact. In the correspondence, Cleopatra appeals to his sense of mutual ambition, framing their relationship as the key to both Rome's and Egypt's supremacy in the ancient world. However, her letter is carefully crafted, hinting at more than just a political alliance. She reminds him of their shared vision, a vision that cannot be fully realized without the support of both Egypt and Rome united. Meanwhile, Cleopatra's most trusted advisor, her general and childhood friend, Ptolemy's former commander, urges her to take more drastic action. The rival faction within the royal court is growing bolder, and Cleopatra's presence at the palace is no longer enough to control the storm that is brewing. In a private meeting, her general suggests that they eliminate the head of the insurrection, a proposal that shocks Cleopatra. He argues that the only way to ensure Egypt's survival is to take decisive action, to rid the kingdom of those who would use the people's fear to weaken the throne. But Cleopatra hesitates. She has spent years building her image as a ruler who listens to her people, a queen who commands with wisdom rather than force. The blood of her enemies on her hands would destroy her carefully cultivated image, turning her into the very tyrant she swore to avoid. It is a decision that weighs heavily on her conscience, but the stakes are high. The longer she delays, the more power her enemies will gain. Amid these internal struggles, Cleopatra's relationship with Caesar faces new tests. She is desperate for his support, but his absence in Alexandria has left a void that only grows as time passes. Rumors circulate that Caesar's attention has turned elsewhere, and Cleopatra fears that the emperor's growing focus on consolidating his power in Rome may lead him to abandon her. She cannot afford to wait for him to return. Egypt's fate lies in her hands. The day of reckoning arrives when Cleopatra's cousin, the leader of the rival faction, publicly challenges her right to rule. In an open declaration in the court, he demands that Cleopatra step down and allow the throne to pass to a more legitimate member of the royal family, one who, in his eyes, embodies the true spirit of Egypt. The tension in the room is palpable, and Cleopatra feels the eyes of the court turn to her, waiting for her response. In a moment of clarity, Cleopatra realizes that she cannot play the role of the passive ruler anymore. The soul of Egypt is not something that can be handed over to her enemies, nor can it be dictated by the whims of foreign powers. She must fight for it. With cold resolve, Cleopatra makes her move, publicly denouncing the traitors within her own court. She orders the arrest of her cousin and his supporters, ensuring that they are removed from the palace before they can stir any more unrest. However, her action comes with consequences. The priests, who have been growing more restless, see her decision as an affront to the gods, and their power over the people of Egypt begins to wane. In response, Cleopatra takes a bold step. She proclaims herself as the living goddess, the embodiment of the divine on earth, asserting her rule over both mortal and spiritual realms. This dramatic declaration shifts the balance of power, but it is a dangerous gamble. While her supporters are emboldened by her move, her enemies are now more determined than ever to bring her down. The final confrontation looms as Cleopatra prepares to defend her throne, knowing that her future depends not only on her ability to outwit her enemies, but to maintain the delicate alliance between herself and Rome. She can no longer afford to be caught between the forces that pull her in different directions. She must secure Egypt's soul, and that means making enemies of those who once claimed to protect it. As Cleopatra faces the greatest challenge of her reign, the fate of Egypt hangs in the balance. Will she succeed in holding on to her power, or will the forces of betrayal and greed tear her kingdom apart? Only time will tell. But Cleopatra is determined to fight to the end, knowing that her legacy will not only be defined by her strength, but by the choices she makes in the face of this devastating battle. The dust settles in Alexandria, but Cleopatra's battle for Egypt is far from over. Her decisive actions to quash the internal insurrection have solidified her position in the short term, but they have also sparked deep divisions. The priesthood, once powerful allies, now openly rebel against her. They see her as a false goddess, a ruler who has overstepped the boundaries of divine right by claiming the mantle of the gods. Cleopatra's self-proclamation as the living goddess has alienated many within the religious community, shaking the very foundations of Egyptian belief. In an attempt to regain control of the people's hearts and minds, Cleopatra focuses her efforts on reasserting her connection to the gods. She commissions grand ceremonies and sacrifices in the temples to demonstrate her divine right to rule. But she knows that the true test of her power lies elsewhere, at the heart of Egypt's relationship with Rome. Caesar's continued absence from Alexandria adds to the tension. Cleopatra's fear of losing his support grows with each passing day, as she watches the political landscape in Rome shift beneath her feet. Caesar's rise in Rome, although a source of power for Cleopatra, also makes her vulnerable. She begins to hear murmurs that Caesar is preparing to expand his empire's reach, and the thought of Egypt becoming another province of Rome threatens everything she has worked for. While Cleopatra's connection with Caesar has long been strategic, she now realizes how deeply her fate is tied to his actions. Her life, her rule, is increasingly intertwined with the politics of Rome, and she fears she may be nothing more than a pawn in Caesar's game of empire. With the pressure mounting from both within and beyond, Cleopatra makes a bold decision to confront Caesar once and for all. She must secure her future, and Egypt's, by reminding him that their alliance must be more than just a political necessity. She journeys to Rome alone, without the comfort of her advisors or the grandeur of her court. Cleopatra knows that her presence in Rome will be met with skepticism. She is a foreign queen, one who holds power over an ancient kingdom that stands at the crossroads of Roman expansion. But she is determined to make her voice heard. Her arrival in Rome is met with a mixture of awe and suspicion. The Roman people, who once saw Cleopatra as an exotic symbol of wealth and power, now view her through a more critical lens. She is a woman with a kingdom, one that could easily fall under Roman control if Caesar's empire demands it. The Senate, too, is divided. Some senators see Cleopatra as a necessary ally, a powerful asset in Caesar's plans. Others see her as a threat to Roman authority, a woman who holds too much sway over one of the most influential men in the empire. Cleopatra's time in Rome is fraught with tension. She seeks Caesar out, knowing that only he can provide the assurances she needs. In their private moments, they discuss the future of Egypt. Cleopatra presses him for assurances that Egypt's sovereignty will remain intact, that Rome will not absorb her kingdom into its empire. Caesar, in his usual enigmatic way, reassures her that Egypt's place in the world will not be threatened, at least not while he has any say in the matter. But Cleopatra knows that the ever-expanding Roman Empire will not stop at Egypt, and her future depends on more than just words. Her visit to Rome is also a political maneuver, a means to solidify her position in the eyes of the Roman elites. Cleopatra seeks to align herself with Rome's power brokers, forming new alliances and securing Egypt's place in the new order. She plays her part carefully, ensuring that her image remains that of the powerful, seductive queen who has the ear of the most influential man in the world. But underneath her carefully constructed public persona, Cleopatra remains ever vigilant. She understands that in Rome, as in Alexandria, nothing is ever guaranteed. Yet, even as she navigates the treacherous waters of Roman politics, Cleopatra's position grows more precarious. The whispers of rebellion in Egypt grow louder as she remains absent, and there are those who see her prolonged absence as an opportunity to challenge her rule. Her enemies, those who sought to claim the throne for themselves, rally behind a new candidate, a rival who presents himself as the true protector of Egypt. Cleopatra knows that she cannot afford to leave Alexandria for long, and her absence in Rome has only fueled the flames of discontent back home. When Cleopatra finally returns to Egypt, she does so with a renewed sense of purpose. Her time in Rome has confirmed her worst fears. Caesar's empire is vast, and Egypt's fate may be determined not by her actions, but by the shifting tides of Roman politics. She returns to Alexandria with a heavy heart, understanding that her kingdom's survival will depend on more than just political alliances. It will require her to forge a new path, one that balances Egypt's ancient traditions with the new world order that Caesar is building. The priesthood, who have long criticized her rule, now see an opportunity to seize control. They rally the people, playing on their fears and religious fervor. Cleopatra's claim to the throne is increasingly questioned, and a faction of the elite calls for her to step down and relinquish her power. The once divine image she projected is now tarnished. Her legitimacy, once unquestioned, is now in doubt. At the heart of this struggle is Cleopatra's realization that the legacy she has fought so hard to build may be on the verge of crumbling. She is no longer just fighting for the throne. She is fighting for the very identity of Egypt itself. The people, the gods, the empire. Everything that once defined her reign now stands in the balance. Cleopatra knows that she must make a final, decisive choice. Whether to uphold her claim to the throne and risk everything she's built, or to surrender to the forces of power that threaten to wash over her kingdom like a tide. The question that haunts Cleopatra now is not whether she can defeat her enemies, but whether she can leave a legacy that will endure beyond the chaos of her reign. Will she be remembered as a powerful queen who held her kingdom against overwhelming odds, or as a tragic figure who succumbed to the forces that sought to erase her? As the political storm in Egypt swells, Cleopatra is left to confront her greatest fear, that her reign, her kingdom, and her legacy will slip away, lost to the annals of history. But Cleopatra is not one to give up easily. Her final battle is only beginning, and the fate of Egypt's soul is yet to be decided. Amid the turmoil of Cleopatra's reign, a shocking secret is revealed, one that could change the entire course of history. In the wake of growing unrest in Egypt and mounting pressure from Rome, Cleopatra finds herself at a crossroads. Her political alliances with Julius Caesar and the fragility of her rule are intertwined in a delicate balance. However, a hidden truth, buried in the depths of Cleopatra's private life, comes to light in the most unexpected of ways. While the queen deals with the constant threat of rebellion from within her court and the looming danger from Rome, an outsider arrives in Alexandria, a mysterious figure with a claim that shakes Cleopatra to her core. It is a young man, just past his 20s, who arrives with evidence that he is none other than the long-lost son of Cleopatra herself. His name is Ptolemy Caesarion, and his existence has been hidden from the world for years. The revelation of Caesarion's true identity sends shockwaves through Cleopatra's court. For years, his existence was kept secret, even from her closest allies, a matter of profound importance. As Cleopatra's son with Julius Caesar, Caesarion holds an unprecedented claim to the throne of Egypt, one that could challenge Cleopatra's rule, especially if her enemies ever learn of it. His sudden appearance threatens not only Cleopatra's throne, but the delicate alliance between Egypt and Rome. If the Roman Senate or any of Caesar's rivals were to hear of Caesarion's true lineage, they would see him as the legitimate heir to both Rome and Egypt. Cleopatra, ever the strategic ruler, understands the peril that this revelation brings. She had always known that Caesarion's identity was a secret too dangerous to reveal, not only to her enemies, but even to her own people. The existence of a true heir to the throne is a powerful political weapon, one that can either secure her future or shatter it entirely. To protect him, Cleopatra must make a difficult decision, whether to embrace him publicly as her rightful heir or keep him hidden, ensuring his safety but risking her own kingdom's stability. The appearance of Caesarion changes the dynamics of Cleopatra's rule. Some of her most trusted advisors urge her to make Caesarion her co-regent, presenting him as the future of Egypt. This could help solidify her legitimacy in the eyes of her people and serve as a powerful tool in negotiations with Caesar. After all, Caesar's blood runs through the young man's veins, making him both a symbol of Roman support and an unparalleled asset to Cleopatra's rule. But other advisors, particularly those loyal to Cleopatra's late brother Ptolemy XIII, view Caesarion's claim with suspicion and see him as a potential threat to the throne. To some, he is not a child of divine descent, but a foreign interloper with no place in the royal bloodline. Cleopatra's hesitation grows as the whispers of Caesarion's true identity spread within the court. The young man, despite his royal lineage, is not ready for such a responsibility. He has spent his life in secret exile, and his mind is filled with the fantasies of a ruler who does not yet grasp the complexity of the world around him. While he may share the blood of Julius Caesar, he lacks the ruthlessness and cunning that Cleopatra has honed over years of political warfare. His naivety, though endearing, makes him vulnerable to manipulation, and Cleopatra is deeply conflicted about whether she should thrust him into a position of power or keep him in the shadows. As tensions in Egypt rise, Cleopatra finds herself torn between her maternal instincts and her political duty. She knows that the threat to her rule comes not just from the priesthood or the Roman Senate, but from within her own family. Cleopatra's distant cousin, who had once opposed her rule, has seen the potential of Caesarion's claim and decides to exploit it. He begins to rally support for Caesarion's coronation, presenting the young man as the rightful heir to the throne. Cleopatra's enemies seize upon the idea that Egypt needs a king, a true male heir to lead the kingdom into the future, rather than a queen who is seen as an outsider and a manipulator. The situation becomes even more dire when Cleopatra receives word from Rome. The Roman Senate, led by those who are opposed to Caesar's legacy, begins to rally behind Caesarion, viewing him as a potential rival to Cleopatra's rule. The Senate sees an opportunity to undermine Cleopatra's influence by backing her son as a figurehead, potentially pulling Egypt away from her control and into the hands of Rome. It is a move that would give them a direct stake in Egypt's future, a dangerous gambit that would strip Cleopatra of her power. In a bold and perhaps reckless move, Cleopatra decides to reveal Caesarion's identity to the court. In a carefully orchestrated ceremony, Cleopatra publicly names him as her heir, and with this proclamation, she solidifies her son's future as the next ruler of Egypt. But this decision is not without risk. By openly declaring Caesarion's lineage, Cleopatra puts not only her own life in jeopardy, but the entire future of Egypt. Her enemies, both in Egypt and Rome, see this move as a direct challenge to their power, and they begin to rally their forces against her. Caesarion's public recognition as her heir marks a turning point in Cleopatra's reign. The young prince's existence will be both a symbol of hope for some and a source of fear for others. He holds the potential to unite Egypt under a new, more powerful vision, one that could either protect Egypt's independence or lead it into Rome's inevitable grasp. Cleopatra's decision to unveil Caesarion to the world is the beginning of a new chapter in her struggle for survival. But in the end, Cleopatra's true test is whether she can hold on to power long enough for Caesarion to fully mature into a ruler capable of carrying the weight of her legacy. The game has changed, and Cleopatra must now fight not just for her own future, but for the future of her son, and the future of Egypt itself. As the winds of political change begin to blow through Alexandria, Cleopatra faces a new challenge. To protect her legacy, she must ensure that Caesarion's path is one she can control, and that the future of Egypt will not fall into the hands of those who would see it crushed by the weight of empire. The stakes have never been higher for Cleopatra. With the revelation of her son Caesarion's true identity, the entire political landscape of Egypt shifts. Her enemies, both within her court and in the Roman Senate, view this as a powerful opportunity to undermine her rule. Cleopatra has gambled everything on her son's future, but the cost of this gamble grows more apparent with each passing day. The final phase of her reign has begun, and the specter of betrayal looms large. As Cleopatra consolidates her power in Alexandria, a delicate balance of alliances must be maintained. Caesarion's claim to the throne is a powerful symbol for some, but it also places Cleopatra in an incredibly precarious position. Her decision to publicly name her son as her heir has opened the floodgates for her enemies. Those who have long plotted against her now see their chance to strike. What they hadn't counted on was Cleopatra's resilience, but even her cunning may not be enough to safeguard her reign. The Roman Senate, ever watching and ever hungry for power, has begun to shift its stance. While some factions continue to support Cleopatra and her son as a way to maintain Rome's influence in Egypt, others see Caesarion's potential as a tool for their own gain. A faction of senators, now in open opposition to Cleopatra, begins to maneuver behind the scenes. They see Caesarion's legitimacy as an opportunity to take control of Egypt and, through him, assert Roman dominance over the Nile. The fact that Caesarion is Julius Caesar's son makes him the perfect figurehead, a puppet they can control to further Rome's imperial ambitions. Meanwhile, within the palace walls, betrayal comes from an unexpected source. One of Cleopatra's most trusted generals, a man who has served her for years, secretly pledges his loyalty to Caesarion and the faction of Roman supporters who see Cleopatra's reign as an obstacle to their goals. This general, who had once sworn allegiance to Cleopatra, now begins to sway those around him, subtly undermining her authority. He's a master of strategy and deception, and his shift in loyalty threatens to unravel everything Cleopatra has worked so hard to protect. The general believes that Caesarion, with the backing of Rome, is the key to securing Egypt's future. A future where Cleopatra's vision is replaced by one more aligned with Roman interests. The tension between Cleopatra and Caesarion grows as well. Though she loves her son deeply, she begins to sense the stirrings of ambition within him. Ambition that could eventually drive a wedge between mother and child. Caesarion, now more aware of his power, becomes increasingly restless. He is no longer content to be merely a figurehead or a pawn in his mother's political game. He dreams of ruling in his own right, of casting aside his mother's influence and claiming the throne for himself. His ambition, once ignited by Cleopatra's protection and love, now becomes a source of friction. He begins to question his mother's decisions, particularly her long-standing alliances with Rome. Cleopatra, ever the strategist, recognizes the danger in her son's growing independence. Yet, despite the rising tension between them, she holds on to the belief that she can control the reins of power. She knows that in order for Egypt to survive, Caesarion must be the future, but she is not ready to relinquish control just yet. Her maternal instinct and her political mind conflict, creating a fracture that she fears may widen with time. Her worst fears materialize when, one fateful night, Cleopatra's general, who has now allied with Caesarion's faction, stages a coup. With a carefully executed plan, he seizes control of the royal palace, taking Cleopatra captive and forcing her to step down in favor of Caesarion. The betrayal is swift and brutal, one she never saw coming from someone she had trusted so completely. Cleopatra is shocked by the suddenness of it all. In one moment, her entire world shatters. Her enemies have won. Her son, the man she has fought so hard to protect, is now the tool of those who wish to see Egypt bend to Rome's will. The coup sends shockwaves throughout the city. Cleopatra's supporters rally, but they are quickly overwhelmed by the growing power of Caesarion's faction. Her generals, disillusioned by her earlier moves and torn between loyalty to her and the realization that her reign has become untenable, waver in their support. The streets of Alexandria are filled with violence and chaos as the once proud queen finds herself stripped of everything she fought for. In the final confrontation between mother and son, Cleopatra faces Caesarion in the throne room of the palace, the very place where she once reigned supreme. Her son, standing tall and resolute, demands that Cleopatra abdicate the throne in favor of his new vision for Egypt. He speaks of Rome's power and the need for Egypt to fall in line with the future Caesar is building. Cleopatra, heartbroken and betrayed, knows that the game is over. There is no winning this battle, not for her and not for Egypt, not unless she makes an unimaginable sacrifice. In a final moment of clarity, Cleopatra realizes that her legacy, the future of Egypt, is no longer hers to dictate. She makes the painful decision to surrender to her son, to relinquish the throne in a move that will secure his future, but at a terrible cost to her own soul. The last words she speaks to Caesarion are those of a mother who has loved deeply, but who has been forced to accept that her reign is over. You are Egypt's future, but I was Egypt's past. As Cleopatra exits the palace, a broken woman, she is led away by her remaining loyalists. Her heart is heavy, but there is a bittersweet relief in knowing that Egypt's soul will remain intact, at least for now. Caesarion, despite his betrayal, is still her son. The vision she once had for Egypt, the dream of a kingdom that stood strong in the face of empire, has been lost. But in her final moments of power, Cleopatra realizes that no one, not even a queen, can escape the march of time, and no legacy, no matter how grand, can withstand the tides of fate. Cleopatra's downfall is complete. But in the final twist, as she vanishes into the annals of history, her legacy, her enigmatic reign, her strength, her contradictions, will live on. Her name will be remembered not only as a queen, but as the tragic heroine who fought to the end, whose betrayal was the price she paid for Egypt's survival. The final curtain falls on her reign, leaving the world to wonder. Was she a manipulative ruler, a goddess, or a mother who lost everything to the game of power? The answer lies buried in the sands of time, forever a mystery.